What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple H podcast, Happy Hour Hoops. And today we are previewing the Central Division in the NBA. Steve, Jake, and myself, we'll be talking ball all day here. How we doing, guys?
We're doing, man. We're doing. We are. But this is going to be halfway, right? This will be third division
35 days.
Woo.
35 days.
You're right.
Kevin
15
Durant
teams
days
down
away.
after today.
Okay. Future NBA champion Kevin Durant. What? No.
We'll see. That's going to be a fun division to preview once we get there as well. But today, like I said, we have the Central Division. We got the Bucks, we got the Cavs, we got the Bulls, we got the Pacers, and the Pistons. Probably not as drama-filled of a division as we had last week. Maybe a little more easier just to break down and process when just looking at these rosters from the outside in. And we will get to that division in just a sec. But before we start, the only real news that has happened since last time was the Philadelphia 76ers signed Kelly Oubre to the squad, which two things was not surprised. Well, I was surprised that Kelly Oubre was still out there. I was not surprised that he got signed because I knew it was going to happen eventually. He was probably the best skill-wise free agent available as far as someone that can make an impact on a roster immediately. So Kelly Oubre goes to the Sixers. Important for their depth, I think, especially if there's still question marks on Harden. They need scoring and some wing play from somewhere. So, I mean, what you guys have anything on Oubre to the Sixers? I thought it made a ton of sense. I actually thought it was a pretty good move for them, but not much of a needle mover.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good move. He was actually very good when you need to step up for Charlotte, and he's a guy who I think if something happens with James Harden and they were to trade him, he's a guy who could step up and give him starter minutes and play, pretty sizable role for this team. I actually like Oubre a lot. I think he's a very underrated player. I think he got overhyped, obviously, because he was, the meme of the females love Kelly Oubre. Everyone loves Kelly Oubre. And, and it's like it took away from him as a basketball player. He's actually a pretty good basketball player. Really kind of stepped up when he went to Charlotte of what he can do. And I like the move. I hate Philly. I like the move. I actually think he's going to help him out a decent amount.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I mean, they needed some depth. They needed some scoring punch. Oubre can definitely do that. I think the biggest thing, like you said, with Oubre is the hype around him, at least going into the Warriors situation just the last couple of years. Like, he's not the player. He's been a little overrated as a player, but that doesn't make him a bad player. He's still effective, and he's definitely going to help that team. They needed some punch, and like you said, if Harden goes, they need to help Tyrese Maxey out a little bit. So Oubre, it's a good move for him too to kind of help his career, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. Good landing spot. It was a guy at one point in the Celtics offseason I was raising my eyebrows at. I wouldn't have minded. I think it was before the O'Shea Brissett signing and a few of the other guys came to the squad. So definitely still has some left in the tank. Makes total sense to me. I don't know why Kelly Oubre just seems like it will feel right in a Philly jersey. And I'm sure Philly is going to be welcoming Oubre and Patrick Beverley, a couple newcomers, guys who have an edge to them. Honestly, those two guys probably make a big difference for the squad. But time will tell that. The other piece of news, because we haven't talked about him in a couple weeks, and everyone inside the basketball world would like us to talk about him continuously because that's what everyone else is doing. Dame Lillard. A couple days ago, we got word that the trade talks were over. Portland was done talking trades with Dame. We had a few more rumors come out about the Heat, and then today, who we think was the mystery team that was talked about this whole time, the mystery Eastern Conference team. Jake told us before we hopped on, he was worried that it was always his Cavs, and they were going to do something stupid for Lillard. It was not. Apparently, it's the Toronto Raptors, and apparently the Toronto Raptors are still in the discussion, still trying to acquire Damian Lillard. I mean, the way I see it, it's pretty simple. If they pull it off, what they gave up is probably too much to the point where they're actually a contender. I'm sure there's a way where they could be better by trading for Damian Lillard. I don't think there's any way they trade for Damian Lillard and then in the same move are also all of a sudden a contender. I'm sure we share similar sentiments, but where are you guys at? I mean, Raptors obviously not afraid to make a big splash like this. That's probably why they were the mystery team all along. Pretty cool they were moving in silence there, but obviously no deal done. Do we really think Dame's going to Toronto?
I don't. I just don't think Toronto's in a win now buy type of mode. You look at the makeup of this team, and I just don't really see that. Right? You have some expiring contracts. You have an older, I guess, core besides Scotty Barnes, obviously, who's a young guy there. And if you're thinking a Damian Lillard deal, is Scotty's probably the only untouchable piece. But if you're trading for Damian Lillard, you want to be in a win now. Who are you giving back? Right? Who are you giving back to Portland there besides probably a bunch of picks? But in my mind, I don't know. I just don't. I wouldn't like the fit. I don't think it would work. I think the Blazers would win regardless, like you said, Donnie, just because of the spot Toronto puts it in. Because even if we keep Toronto's team together, right? Let's say somehow they get this deal done without having to give up Pascal or Scotty. Let's just say those two are locked in with Dame Lillard, and that's like their big three. Anobi, maybe he goes back prone. Doesn't matter. Let's just say those three are there. I still don't think it's a championship team. And if you're trading for Dame at his age, at this point in time, you're trading to win a championship, right? That's the whole point when you make a splash like this. And I just don't. I think Toronto's window has shut. So I think you got to go the other direction. Don't try to just buy a star and finish fifth in the East. Try to rebuild around a really good young player you have in Scotty Barnes and see if you can build a team around him.
Are you just saying that because you're scared of losing the potential of Pascal to your precious Dallas Mavericks?
No, I'm not.
On your shirt right now.
I'm not, because I also think too. I don't think.
Or just worried for Pascal's future in general if he's stuck with a 33-year-old Dame in the last couple of years.
I think it'd be a fun combo, Pascal and Dame. I just don't think it's going to work. And I also don't think the Raptors are in a position to trade for an older star to try to – how many years are you getting out? And also, too, we love Damian Lillard, but let's be honest here. That guy doesn't play a full season. He can't stay on the court the whole year. It's not a guy Toronto – I don't know. It's a weird team to pop up. I was like, all right, yeah, cool. Like, I just kind of looked at the art. I was like, all right, whatever. Toronto, cool.
It's not a move that, I mean, we've talked up Masai Ujiri a lot on this show. I think very highly of him as an executive and everything. It does not feel like a move that he would make even. So it feels out of character for them to be in this kind of conversation, the way they kind of like to keep their options open, like you're saying. I think the biggest thing is that from this story, the Dame reporting, that the Raptors are an interesting team as the mystery team or whatever it is. But I think it's going to be hilarious when the Heat just keep lowballing Portland and then they end up trading him to the Knicks or something like that. Like, what I don't think it's going to be the Knicks, but I just feel like Miami is playing a really dangerous game right now by lowballing all these offers, because Portland's going to take the first one that looks any bit appetizing to them, because they have to. As we've talked about on past podcasts, they made their bed the second they picked Scoot Henderson. They can say, hey, we're going to go into camp with him, all this other stuff. Good luck trying to pull off that dynamic. The Miami thing, I get Pat Riley. This is what Pat Riley does. He's going to try to milk this. He's not going to make a move unless he feels like he absolutely has to. And that is considering the context of what the offers are going to be for Dame around the league, obviously. But I mean, listen, I don't know. Maybe they do get him on pennies on the dollar, but it's a risky game for Miami, who I was talking about the Raptors with an old Dame. That's an old ass Miami team, especially with Jimmy Butler. He ain't getting any younger either. So it's an interesting cat and mouse game right now, I think, with Miami and Portland. And I'm just, hey, Pat Riley knows what he's doing, but man, it's gonna be fun to watch to see especially if Dame gets traded somewhere else. Like, what the hell, Miami? What was your offer? Like, if they don't offer, that's what I'm thinking. Like, if Dame gets traded and then we hear, oh, Miami's best offer was the poo-poo platter. It's like, what were you guys even doing all summer then? Like, why would you not want to make this move? They feel like the team that has to make this moves, so that's why they don't want to overpay. I get where it all comes from. It's just it's an interesting game of cat and mouse between Pat Riley and the Blazers right now. Blazers organization right now.
Dunny, you're muted.
Definitely was
There
muted. Yeah, no, for sure. Cat and mouse game for sure won't be the last time within the next 35 days that we talk about Damian Lillard and probably the Miami Heat in this situation. It's just fun that we can have we can take the bag off the head of the mystery team in the Eastern Conference. Turns out it's just the Toronto Raptors. Probably an even bigger question mark of what the package would be from that group opposed to the Miami Heat's package, but apparently the Heat are daring the Blazers to find another package. That was the other reports from today. So we'll see. We'll see if the Raptors make a move. We'll see if Portland gives in on the report they made just days ago about how they are done talking trades with Dame. So it was our news and notes, and we'll start with the team in the Central Division that we actually talked a bit about last week after Giannis and his comments saying he's a winner first before he's a Milwaukee Buck, and he's going to do whatever it takes to put himself in a situation to win another Larry O'Brien trophy. The Miami Bucks for next season, their over-under on win totals is 52.5. I really struggled with this one. My gut told me the under, so that's what I took here. Pretty interested to hear what you guys have to say about this just because of how torn I was on this. I think it's a really good line, all things considered, but I did go under. I don't have the best vibes about the Milwaukee Bucks at the moment.
Yeah, I took the under as well. I don't love it because I think I'm right around that number. Like low 50s is really where I see this Bucks team. I mean, it's right. You're taking the under. You're betting against Giannis, who's probably the best basketball player in the world, and that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a tough thing to do. But I look at this team and it's just kind of like copy and paste for the past couple of years. And when you copy and paste, that's fine when your team's young and getting better. But this is an old team kind of regressing, and this is also, I think, the first time I've seen a little bit of frustration come from Giannis, where, if things go bad, we could see Giannis getting a little upset, or it's just not going to be a perfect storm, perfect world for this team anymore. So I'm taking the under. Middleton, I know he's been dealing with injuries, but we haven't seen him get back to that elite level of playing he has. Love Drew, but he's older. And, Brook Lopez, another guy, had a great year. He's 35, 36 years old. Like, this team is old. Like, this is an old team, and this is also a team that relies so heavily on one player. When you rely so heavily on one player, he has to be all the way in. And I think Giannis is when he's on the court. Absolutely. I don't think there's many players in the NBA that just try harder when they're on the court than Giannis. But if Giannis is to miss any games at all, this is not a good basketball team. This is not like the Milwaukee Bucks in the past where Giannis is out and they can, have that defense and make up for it. I see him get older, and it's just too much relying on one player. I'm gonna take the under because I think so many teams got better, and the Milwaukee Bucks just kind of stayed the same or went down a little bit from last year, in my opinion.
What are you thinking, Jake?
I think I agree with everything Steve said, including the part where Giannis is the best basketball player in the world. And for that reason, I have to pick them to go over 52 Fair. Because I picked the Celtics to go under. So that was like last week. A couple weeks ago, I told you guys like Celtics going under means the Bucks are going over.
Can't be both.
I think it could be, I think it'll be 53 or 54 wins. This is not a 60 win team. This is not the juggernaut we've had in years past. They could still be good enough to win a title. I'm really interested in Giannis's, temperament and what you're saying about the vibes, Dunny, too, because it is weird vibes right now. Like Giannis talking about leaving and everything. Who knows if things go bad, what's he going to do? How is he going to react? We've never seen him in these situations before. Personally, I feel like Giannis is going to be in like killer mode all year because of that. Even if he's like mad at the team, I feel like that's going to make him press harder. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Him pressing could be a bad thing ultimately. It could lead to turnovers, could lead to him being injured, could lead to him becoming more inefficient, whatever that could manifest itself in other ways. But I just think he's either one or two. It has to be one or two on your list and best basketball player in the world. And I think he's due. He has a bad taste in his mouth for that playoff loss last year. And I think there's at least one more good year in Milwaukee before they really got to answer some questions. I think it's just because he's going to be locked in. But I also could see him derailing the season too. Yeah, I mean, there's both are very good options. Like I said, I'm just taking the over just because I picked the Celtics under.
Yeah, and that's my under is the same kind of vibes as Steve. Like, if it does go under, they're probably just missing this mark. That's why I said I do think it's a good line. Biggest part for me is just the vibes. Giannis's latest comments. New head coach was a big thing for me. And then just the reserves that are actually going to be getting the minutes on this team are extremely old.
Yeah.
Or just inconsistent guys. Like Grayson Allen's probably the youngest, and Grayson Allen could be a starter for this team. He might be to start the year, but like you look at other like Thanasis Antetokounmpo's already 31 years old. Pat Connaughton 30, Jay Crowder 33, Goran Dragic 37, Drew Holiday 33. Myers Leonard 31, Brooke Lopez 35. Brothers, yeah, they're both 35.
It's an old team, dude.
That's an old team.
Chris Middleton 32, and then the exception to the rule is Bobby Portis is 28. But the end of last season, I don't know if you guys remember, Bobby Portis didn't seem too happy with whatever the Bucks had going on, and whether that was Giannis's comments or the flame out by Coach Bud or whatever, but something just doesn't seem right with this Milwaukee Bucks team. Me watching Giannis drop 50, 14, and 15 could easily change that after. But as of right now, there's just those few factors are what would be taking the under on this team. We don't have to talk much about who the team MVP would be because
it's obvious.
No one's taking Brooke Lopez here. Most likely to be traded for me on this team would actually be Chris Middleton. I think I was between him and Portis, truthfully. I think they can't really afford to trade Brooke Lopez, who I think is a guy that a lot of people might say for this team, but really he's been such a pivotal part of this team and what they like to do that people don't realize. When Giannis doesn't show up scoring or doesn't play, he actually is a guy who steps in and can give you 25 to 30 if need be. He's basically recreated his whole game since he's been in Milwaukee and has turned himself into a three-point shooter. And then just outside of him, they don't really have any skill even close to anywhere near that size. So I don't think it would be Brooke that gets traded. I do think it'll be Middleton, a guy who they've had no problem moving to the bench because he can't stay healthy for these stretches, but is also such a notable and good scorer that I think you get something in return. That's why I think Middleton would be the one traded on this team if we see it happen.
Yeah, I don't hate that take. I'm going with the other guy you mentioned, Bobby Portis. It's kind of obvious, right? End of year, we kind of saw, maybe he doesn't like him in Milwaukee. And also, too, like this is a guy who's played really well off the bench for a couple seasons.
Very good.
And in the NBA, when you start to play really well off the bench, you kind of be like, what would it be like if I'm a consistent starter? And I think Bobby Portis, it's tough because – I think he's best at the 4, sometimes the 5, and who's ahead of him? It's Lopez and Giannis. And even though Lopez is 35, I don't think they're ever going to be benching him for Portis. The only way Portis really gets in consistent starts, I think, is barring an injury, because I just don't think Milwaukee will play that big. I could be wrong, and we could see them play that for stretches, and we have seen it in game. But just starting and getting starter minutes, I don't see Portis really ever getting that, barring an injury. So I could see Portis, putting up another type of 6th man of the year caliber season and being like, I deserve more. I deserve more minutes and a chance where I can start. Because like you said, if he has issues with the team, what's holding him back, right, for wanting to go elsewhere?
Mm-hmm. Jake, who's getting booted off the Bucks this year?
It's Chris Middleton I've got my eyes on too. I feel like I
Yeah.
don't know, man. Like Drew's not going anywhere because Drew Holiday is still a baller, at least as of last year. Now guards can
And
go
they
down
sold
very
their
quickly.
future for him
And
already,
they sold
too.
everything for Drew too. So getting rid of him is a bad look. It's all squarely on Middleton, but Middleton, what the fuck are you gonna get for him right now?
Right.
I know.
It's
kind of why I didn't
like you
take
should have traded him 2 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
You know, so
And
they
that's
can't
the-
trade any. I don't know. This one was hard for me because I'm like, who the fuck does anybody want from this team? Giannis. Like Giannis is the most likely to be traded. Honestly, at this point, he's the one talking about being traded. So maybe
I would
he's
not
the
want to
most
see
likely.
what that return would be. I would
Yeah.
not want to see what that.
It's not
return
worth
would
it.
be.
Whatever it is, it's not worth it.
Oklahoma City doesn't have enough first round picks. That's
Yeah.
pretty much they don't have enough first round picks right now.
You can only
Danny
put 15 on the
Ainge
floor.
couldn't even. Yeah, it's you bring up a good point about Middleton. I think this is the sad part of the business too, but for a Middleton trade to actually work out, it would probably have to come after his best 2-week stretch in the last like 2 years. It'd probably have to be a moment where he's scoring in bunches, playing very good basketball for a month span, and then maybe Milwaukee, takes advantage of that. But who knows? I think a trade is due at some point for these Milwaukee Bucks. We'll probably see it before the deadline. Who that will be, we don't know. We think it might be Middleton, could be Portis, but like you guys just said, it could easily be Giannis. My best case and worst case for this team, I think best case is, this can be easily said. I can say this confidently, is an NBA Finals appearance again.
Yeah.
Giannis, Steve mentioned it. 1 or 2 on your best in the world list, and that's that. And the worst would be a first-round exit, and Giannis gets even more frustrated with this team and starts speaking out even more, and Milwaukee fans are sad. I think it's that simple for me.
I think that's it. I'm just going to echo you if I say anything. I think that we've seen this pretty much this exact same team win the finals before. Who's to say they can't do it again? Giannis could just will them to a championship, even if they are getting older and regressing a little bit. We've seen some of the postseasons he's put up and the way he could put a team on his back. And yeah, I think first round exit. I don't think this team ever misses the playoff, barring an injury. But we don't do injuries for worst case scenario because we don't root for injuries.
Right.
So I think first round exit. I also too, Dunny, to be honest, I think they get past the first round. I don't think Giannis loses first round regardless. I think unless they get a tough matchup, I think worst case probably a second round exit because Giannis is too talented. Because we're thinking Milwaukee's at worst a 3 seed, right? Is that fair? At worst a 3 seed. I don't know if they're gonna face. They could face a team that'll give them a series, but I don't know if they're facing a team that's going to take them out round 1. Giannis is just too talented of a player for that. We've seen it before.
Yeah. I mean, it's either they win the title or Giannis gets traded. Those are the two scenarios for me. Yeah. They're going to win the title or Giannis is going to be gone by February to New York or somewhere else, and we won't talk about the Bucks on this podcast a lot more. That's for sure.
Yeah, true.
Yes. I said at the top, this division was easier than the last couple we covered, and starting with the Bucks. It's a lot of Giannis, a lot of things centered around Giannis, and not much else after that. So Jake, we'll move on to a little more exciting team. Jake's Cleveland Cavaliers. Crazy season last year. I mean, started white hot, one of the scariest looking offenses in basketball. I had the pleasure of watching them beat my Celtics twice in overtime early in the year. Mitchell, scorched earth, was unbelievable. Their win total for this upcoming season is 50.5. And spoiler alert, we all have the under, which I'm surprised by. Jake, why don't you start us off here? Talk about your Cleveland Cavaliers and why you have the under for this win total.
So 2 years ago they were at, I think, 44. Last year was 51. We've talked about the East in general. The Bucks and the Celtics are the class. That third spot's really up for grabs, and it really could be the Cavs. The Cavs could win 52 games, be the 3rd seed in the East, and I feel like that's kind of where people are just kind of slotting them and expecting, that's where they'll contend for and everything else. This is like the least, like, I think it's going to go so bad this year. I really do.
Really?
I think things are going, first of all, our GM got arrested for I want to get the exact thing right. Impaired driving, drunk driving the other day. So that's the vibes to start the season. Drunk driving GM, that's great vibes to start there. Mitchell is going to ask for a trade by the end of this year, guys. Like, he's just not staying here. I don't see it happening. I don't like the comments I saw out of him about how awesome, like those comments you don't just say those things. And he's an emotional guy. He never wanted to be in Cleveland. So why would he sign the extension? They're in the same spot as Giannis thing next year. He can sign an extension next offseason. Do either of you think Donovan Mitchell's signing that extension next offseason unless they win the title? No, he's not. So they're fucked. Like, I honestly think with Mitchell, they're fucked, and they should have explored trading him this summer, but you can't explore trading him after 1 year. Like, you just can't. And no one would ever do it. So they're going to run through this year. Allen's going to lose trade value because his confidence is shook, and that team, they can't play Mobley and Allen together. That's been clear. And I don't think that's going to improve unless Mobley turns into like a 40% shooter. I think Mitchell is going to want out at some point, but I think they're going to give the ball to him and make him the lead creator and lead guy to make him happy. And it's going to hurt Garland's development. It's also going to piss Garland off too if he has to deal with that again this year. I don't got good vibes from the Cavs. So I'm going under. I think this team could be a play-in team potentially and surprise everybody. I think people are too high on them.
But Jake, what about the addition of Max Strus?
Oh yeah, you're right. We went out and balled out for Max Strus. You're right. Huge signing. Over's back on.
You got Niang too, right? Those were the two big splashes the Cavs made. Niang's fine.
We asked for shooting. I asked for the Cavs to get a shooter and to get a guy that could defend 3 and D, and they did do that. Those guys fit those spots, so they did address that. I just think it comes down to Mitchell, and I don't think he's going to want to stay here in June. So that's the issue. I'm really looking, and so maybe they do win 50 wins and everything's good and fine till then. But
yeah, I got the under. It's a slight under again, just like Milwaukee. Slight under. Big reason for me here, Jake, you kind of pointed to it a little bit, is like you have, 4 talented players, I think, in Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen. But, like, it's hard to play both on the court at the same time. With Garland and Mitchell, it just wasn't really working that well. And Mobley and Allen is just – that's what killed them. Against the Knicks, you just can't do that. And so – when you have 4, good players, I like all 4, but it's limited your team. It hurts you. And I think it's going to hurt the Cavs. And it's either going to be like, you got to start figuring out lineups. So maybe you start, all 5. There's your starting 5. And then you try to stagger them. It just doesn't work because when you want to build a championship team, you want the 5 best players on your team on the court at the same time, because we see in the playoffs, benches shrink. Teams have a shorter rotation, maybe only playing 7, 8 guys total, and you're playing your starters big minutes. Cavs can't do that. They just can't do that. And we haven't seen anything since this team's kind of been created where they've shown that they can do that. It just doesn't work. So I'm taking the under here because, like I said, I like the players. It just doesn't kind of fit together. So either one's got to get traded, maybe someone's got to go, or you got to switch up your lineups, and that just leads to inconsistency. So I'm taking the under. I like Mobley. I think Mitchell had an incredible year, kind of proved me wrong of how good of a player he could be his first year in Cleveland. But like I said, a lot of that was, before him and Garland started playing together, was when Mitchell was balling out. So it's just – I'm going to take the under here. I just don't see many games where the Cavs just have Mobley, Allen, Garland, Mitchell on the floor at the same time, and everything's just humming. Everything's working. So give me the under.
Yeah, my biggest thing was, Jake, what'd you say, that they were 51, I think, wins last year?
Yeah, right at the number.
Yeah, so they're right at the line last year, and I thought their regular season they looked incredible, and then they just looked like a completely different team in the playoffs, and that was really the only logic I had picking the under here. I was like, okay, well, they looked great getting that 51, which would just barely get them this over, and they looked a lot worse after the fact. I do like the additions that Jake talked about. We can joke. I don't personally like Max Strus, but I think he's a good fit for this team, and I'll probably like him a little better as a Cav and not as a Miami Heat. But yeah, I like the additions. I don't think this team's going to be bad by any means, but it's hard to come across 50 wins, and it's even
Yeah.
harder to do it in back-to-back seasons. So we'll see with the Cavs. We all have the under. We do have different team MVPs, though. I have Mitchell just because, like I said, I watched him up close and personal a couple different times last year. He was outstanding. I don't see anyone individually outperforming him on this team. I do like Steve's pick, however, for the upside.
Yeah.
But so Steve, let us know who you got as the team MVP.
You guys know I've been talking about ever since we started talking about the Cavs, Evan Mobley. I think this guy has all the potential in the world, and we started to finally see his offense start to come around in the second half of last year, which is a big sign. Another reason I like Evan Mobley as quote unquote the team MVP is I think he could win Defensive Player of the Year. I think this guy could be the best defender on the court at all times, which is huge. And I also said, too, and this is why I had the unders, I think him and Jared Allen on the court at the same time kind of limits Mobley a little bit. I'll tell you what, I love Jared Allen. You know, I wear the Fro shirt all the time with Jared Allen on it, but he might be gone, or they might switch things up. Mobley's the guy now. He's the big man now. I think offense, he was trying to work on the outside shot a little bit. I think you give him another offseason. I think this guy's a hard worker. I think he's someone we saw him take a little bit of a jump. I think where he's going to take another jump, and this is someone where I think can win Defensive Player of the Year and also probably put up 20, 12, and 4, and then maybe 3 blocks with it. Like that, those are realistic numbers, I think. And I think he brings more overall to this team than Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell he scored 71 points. He can score like crazy. But Evan Mobley, I think, is the more complete basketball player, definitely the better defender. And I think he has the potential and also the physical size too, right? 7 foot, his wingspan's ridiculous. This guy just learns how to shoot a little bit. He's one of the best players in the league, not just on this team, in the league. So I think we're going to see a big jump from Mobley.
Yeah, I think it will be Mitchell. I think for the betterment of the Cavs' future, it's Evan Mobley. I think you both are right. I think Mitchell's going to do it because that's just what Donovan Mitchell does.
Yeah.
He's going to get his 30. He's going to do what he does. But it needs to be Mobley if this team wants to do some real stuff this year.
All right, well, those are our team MVPs. Most likely to be traded for me, it's Darius Garland. For these, it's honestly a lot of names that I put in when we do these are names that I've heard have already been rumored to be traded.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times, not always, but a lot of the times that's the case. And maybe it's not right away when those rumors happen, but down the road, it tends to happen because either they were true and the player gets moved because that's what the team said they were going to do, or it was halfway true, or it was true until the deal wasn't there anymore, but then the player already hears about it and is upset and wants to get traded anyway. Also, Steve mentioned it, Garland and Mitchell doesn't actually work out as much as people like to think, or as good as it looks on paper. It doesn't look as good on the actual hardwood. And I think they just move on from a guy like Garland before they do with Mitchell. Even, I'm with you, Jake. I don't know if he's signing that extension, but I think if you're the Cavs front office, you're going to do everything you can to try to get him to sign. So I do think they would move Garland before Mitchell, but that's just my hunch.
You guys would see a really sad Jake Micah if they trade Darius Garland. I just want you to know that. Beyond worse than LeBron leaving the second time, maybe not the first time. Garland last year got fucked over. First of all, what's his name? Can't even remember. I think it was Gary Trent. Needs to cut his nails, stabs him in the eye. Dude can't see for 2 months, and then Donovan Mitchell doesn't pass him the ball anytime they're on the court together. So Garland is in a spot. And mind you, as good as people thought they were together, this podcast specifically did not want Donovan Mitchell to go to the Cavs because of this pairing. And I think that everything that we worried about bores out this year in the second year. My most likely is going to be Jared Allen because I think that dude's going to be gone in December. The second they can trade for the rest of the league and all the free agents can get traded, I think Jared's going to go. Like, I just think they have to know that the composition of this team is not structured well right now. And even if they get 60 cents on the dollar for Jarrett, I think it helps them overall because you got to just put Mobley, like you were saying, Steve, he's got to just be in the position, and he's got to be in the position and learn. He's got to fail. He's got to try. He's got to try to cover these guys. You can't baby him his whole career. You got to put him against Embiid. You got to put him against Jokic. You got to just put him out there against all the bigs and see what you actually got in him. I don't think that happens until Allen's gone. So I'll go Allen, but I'm a little worried about Garland because I do think that everything you said about that is right. They're going to try to make Mitchell happy, all that. And the most Cavs thing to happen would be them trading Garland in February and then Mitchell asking for the trade in January or in June. So
I'm with you, Jake. Jared Allen, I kind of alluded to it. I just think he limits Mobley sometimes. And I think Mobley, he's 22 years old. I think he's going to be the centerpiece of this franchise for a while to come. And I think he's going to take another leap. And in order for him to take a leap, he's got to be the guy, like you said, down low. Regardless if he's like playing, traditional center, is playing more of, a stretch, 4 stretch 5 role. I just got to trade Jared Allen. I love Jared Allen too. I think he's a good basketball player. It just doesn't work. It really doesn't work unless Mobley comes out and starts draining threes. Like he's a big threat from the outside. He'll shoot a couple here and there, but he has to be a legitimate threat. But otherwise, you have 2 guys that just outside of 18 feet, they don't even have to respect. That's an issue in today's NBA. So I think Allen's got to go. And Mobley, like you said, steps into, that 5 role. Donnie, you're muted again.
The mute monster's getting you today.
Yeah, I'm trying to not make any noise and let you guys
I know,
talk.
it's the type. I do that shit all the time, trying to type, and then I'll be like, oh, man.
God. All right. Well, you guys got me again. What I was going to say is we got best and worst case scenario for the Cavs here. Yes. It's funny because us breaking down the rest of the team and questions here, we almost said basically everything that could pan out for this Cavs team. I think best case scenario, I do still think if they figure it out and maybe it is a Jared Allen trade that helps them get over this hump. I mean, the way they played in the regular season, like no one would have been surprised if this team went to the conference finals last year before the playoffs started. So I do still think that's their best case scenario. I think a conference finals appearance wouldn't shock me especially if they play the way they did like last regular season. Worst case, I think they missed the playoffs just because how bad they looked in the playoffs. And if they continue that, then if they play like they did against the Knicks in the regular season this upcoming year, they will not make the playoffs. So best and worst for this group is kind of easy for me.
I'm kind of similar with you, Donnie, except I'm just going a little more towards the middle, where I think best case, I don't think they make the conference finals. I think best case is probably the semifinals of the Eastern Conference. Like I said, I just think this team's limited unless a big move is done because they can't play their best players on the court at the same time for an entire game, and benches shrink in the playoffs. And we watched them get exposed by the Knicks, who, spoiler alert, didn't look good in their next series. They didn't look good in their next series. Everyone was like, wow, the Knicks really figured it out. Oh, no, the Knicks just played the Cavs. Like, that's all that happened. And then I think their floor or worst case scenario, I think they're a play-in team. I don't think this team misses the playoffs. I think there's too much talent on this team to miss the playoffs, but things just kind of don't work. They're a play-in team, and maybe, they just don't get out of the play-in.
My best case scenario is they trade Jared Allen for OG Anunoby, go to the NBA Finals, and then probably lose to the Warriors or something like that. But the best case scenario involves trading Jared Allen, re-signing Donovan Mitchell. That's the biggest. I don't care what the Cavs do in the playoffs this year. If they re-sign Donovan in the offseason or convince him to stay some point with their play, that's all. That is what this year, as you said, Donnie, needs to be focused on. Keep Donovan happy and keep him around because otherwise, I don't know what it. I mean, Mitchell and Garland, it's a thing. Like they could still be good. They could still be a great tandem without them. We don't know what that ceiling is, and if this dude up and leaves, we don't know what they're gonna feel that type of way too. So that's what best case scenario is. You keep Mitchell happy and you trade Jared Allen. I think worst case, I've already laid out. Like they trade Garland because they think it'll help Mitchell. Mitchell decides to leave anyways in June. They flame out after they flame out in the playoffs. He gets they have to trade him. They get a bad return for him. And then Mobley next year just isn't the guy. He's not a 1, he's a 3. And they figure that out the hard way. So there's a lot of different scenarios for the Cleveland Cavaliers this year. I think that they're not as much of a surefire, solid team as the general NBA public, I think, has them kind of just slotted in from where they were last year. There's a lot of drama going on, especially now, even more with the GM situation the last couple of days. Like there's just a lot of instability going on right now. So I don't know. I feel like they're a candidate for a team where we're going to be talking in a couple weeks. Like, damn, the Cavs are like 7-12. How did that happen? Like, I really don't have high. I had higher hopes last year, and I wasn't that excited about Mitchell and Garland together. This year, I really am. Maybe it's because after we watched the Browns last night or something. I'm just feeling some type of way towards Cleveland sports today too. But I've been waiting for this Cavs one because I knew I was going to light into them. I'm officially nervous.
I'm shocked right now. I see what you're doing though. You're doing the old, trying to play it down just so when they start doing
maybe I am. But also I think that I'm just used to the Cavs having LeBron James and don't know how to handle not having that cheat code on my roster. Like it feels so weird when the team, flames out and doesn't have answers. Because when LeBron lost, it was like, okay, but we have LeBron again. Like we're just gonna be back. We'll be fine. So
I don't care that we have Max Strus and Georges Niang. We have LeBron. Well, a team that doesn't have a LeBron and a team that doesn't have much of anything going their way the last couple of years is the Chicago Bulls. Jake's, I guess, other team, not by choice. He just lives in Chicago now. The over-under for the Bulls win total is 37.5. I am the lone over here, so I will make my case now. I actually had the under at first, and I thought about it, and I was like, well, DeMar DeRozan is still there, and I think very highly of him. Probably more than most people who cover the NBA or who just watch the NBA in general. I've always loved DeMar DeRozan. I think he's a great player. Really doesn't get enough credit than he deserves. He's
mid-range king.
Yeah, he's a scoring assassin in general. He's kept the mid-range alive specifically, like Steve mentioned, and he's just one of my favorite players to watch. And I was thinking 2018-19, I believe, was his first year in San Antonio. And, that was a team with LaMarcus Aldridge was there, Pau Gasol towards the end of his career. Not many other names besides that. Here, let me just make sure I'm not missing anyone big on this team. Now, Bellinelli, Davis Bertans, that team won 48 games. And I think the Chicago Bulls this year, and granted, it's a different DeRozan, he's years older now. I do still think what the Bulls have this year is more talented than that Spurs roster. And this win total is 10 games less than that. And that's how I got to me taking the over here. I think as long as you have DeRozan, obviously injuries play a factor. I'm banking on Levine being healthy. They re-signed Vooch, so he's still going to be there. And I do tend to like their young talent on this team too. I think there's a few guys who I'm still waiting to kind of emerge, and it's probably this is the last year that they are going to have that leash. Guys like Patrick Williams, Kobe White, Ayu. I think those guys are going to have to, do something this year, or it's probably too late for them. But I don't know. I just thought it was a low number. I figured DeRozan's been on bad teams where he's put up more wins than this before. And yeah, I like the over here. Tell me why I'm wrong though, guys, because it feels nasty.
It's just, to me, it feels like Milwaukee, but worse, where it's like we're getting older and we're running back the same group. And I was surprised when they brought back Vucevic. And I love DeRozan too, Donnie, don't get me wrong, but he's 34. He's 34. And the biggest thing with DeRozan, the difference between DeRozan and, let's say, another aging star who's right around the same age, DeMar DeRozan, like you said, like he's a scoring assassin, but a lot of his scoring is driving to the lane and the mid-range, some contact with the shots. He's not someone who's just sitting out there shooting 10 threes a game. And a lot of times when you get older, you can just, maybe take my game down a little bit. I'll just look for the open corner and shoot. That's never going to be DeRozan's game. So I think we're going to see DeRozan regress a little more quickly than other stars because he has to have that type of physical side still to his game, driving to the lane, taking those contested jumpers. And also too, I look at this team and it's like, I think this team won 40 games last year.
Yes.
And it's just the same old in Chicago. And, the city doesn't have a great track record for teams with expectations. And the biggest thing I look at when I look at this Chicago Bulls team is I go, what could go wrong to not hit this win total? I don't love the bench depth. I really don't. I don't think the guards outside of Caruso are that great at defense. They have a liability in the paint defensively with Vucevic. He's gifted offensively, but he's an absolute liability, and he's getting older. So and you look at the other bigs that they're going to go up against in the East too. It's just they're not going to be able to defend any of them. I'm going to take the under here, but the good news for Chicago sports fans is you got Bedard in the lottery, so you get to watch a little bit of hockey and have some hope for that, because I don't think the Bulls are going to be one of those teams where they're not good enough to really do anything, but they're not bad enough to be the worst team in the league, and they're just in that in-between place where it's just you don't want to deal with it. And if it goes south, right, if they start slow, who's most likely to probably be traded? Probably DeRozan, their best player. So
yeah,
I'm gonna take the under there. I think there's more ways the under hits than the over hits here.
It's a good point.
Yeah. It's nice of you to appeal to Chicago sports fans, but they're too busy arguing about Justin Fields right now on the internet, so they are not paying attention to any Bulls talk. I'm picking the under because I think this team is going to blow it all the way to smithereens because of Connor Bedard is one of the reasons too. I really think this is their chance to just blow it all up, and no one's going to really pay attention to them. They got the hype in the city on other places, whether it's the Bears things, everything else, and there's really nowhere else to go. Like I don't know how you improve it. I think Levine's going to get moved first. I feel like they're trying to move him. And I mean, our friend on Twitter, NBA trade analyst, put that out there a couple months ago that Levine was trying to get moved and bumped it up yesterday. Talking about 8-in potential and everything else in that move, which is whatever. I'm not concerned about that. And it's a guy that's anonymous on the internet, whatever. But Levine, it would make sense if they wanted to move him, but he's very expensive. And it's the point with Levine, I think, is the biggest problem with the Bulls because he's getting paid like a super duper star and he's just not that guy and hasn't been that guy for them. And like you're saying, Dunny, like it's DeRozan's team. Really, like it is that, and it should be. Why would you not want your team to center around DeMar DeRozan? He's an outstanding human being. It seems like a consummate professional, and he's been balling like a superstar still too. So I think their biggest problem is a Zach LaVine problem. I think I'd rather see this team with LaVine gone, with Vooch gone, and then just DeRozan and a bunch of young guys, and that would be way more fun than the squad they're throwing out there this year. So I'm taking the under, but think this is like a way more fun under for me because I want this team can like become so many different things and go so many different ways. Now, mind you, the Bulls of the 21st century have not proven that they could ever do that or ever build a winning franchise. Like this this front office has basically been the same for the last, 15, 20 years and have not been able to produce a consistent winner. So them blowing it up does not mean that it's going to be better. But I just don't know where they go from here. So, yeah, I'm ripping that under. And it's also a kind of a tease towards how we feel about these teams later on, I feel like, too.
Yeah, I was just going to say you just foreshadowed and alley-ooped my best and worst case perfectly because best case, and this might be a reach, it's probably more like a play-in team, but play-in, playoff, fringe team, I think, if everything works out the way ownership apparently wants it to. Because they are just running back the same exact group, which we've seen past couple of years play in playoffs. They're right in that range.
And they had a lot of injuries last year too. Yeah, that's the thing though. They were, and all their guys were hurt. Like they were never the stars that you would think of altogether. We were talking about Vooch, DeRozan, Levine. Were barely on the court together at any time. So it is an issue. Sorry, Dunny. Keep going.
No, you're good. And Steve brought up how he was shocked they brought back Vooch. That tells me maybe he's the guy who gets traded. Maybe they just wanted it to be a contract thing that works out. It would be weird that they signed it in the offseason because usually it's like a sign and trade and it happens right then. Yeah. But, it could still be a money thing that they're just trying to get ahead of. So maybe we see Vooch traded. worst case, all three of us already mentioned it. They blow up this team. Like Jake said, they blow it to smithereens. That's worst case scenario, I think, because your team's going to be pretty dog shit if you blow this up.
Dude,
what's
worst
interesting about
case
the
would
Bedard
just be
point
they
too?
do
Oh,
nothing,
go ahead.
Right? Worst case,
we're
do nothing, and they just missed the playoffs with this roster. I would rather blow it up than just sit with this roster.
Actually, you did say that from the beginning. You said, they could be in that scary zone where you're not good enough to make the playoffs, and you're not bad enough to be in the lottery. That probably, especially as a fan and an owner, that probably is the worst place to be.
I think you both helped me come to the actual point of why they're running this back, and it's the Bedard point and the fact that they need to run this team back because they got to sell season tickets too. Like people are spending money on Blackhawks tickets. The Blackhawks season tickets went crazy this year. The Bulls still got to sell tickets. So how are you going to do that? You can't do that by blowing it up in the summer and being like, we got DeMar DeRozan. Hey, there's the number 1 overall pick, generational franchise in our building. Don't go spend money on him. Come watch DeMar DeRozan and all these random young dudes play basketball. So maybe it's as much as just like we need guys that we can put on posters. I see Vooch's poster, his face on a poster at my train stop every single day. Like Vooch, it says "See Red," and it's just Nikola Vucevic staring in my face. That could be as simple as it is. Like they needed to see some tickets because the other kids coming in town, and they're like, "Hey, we just need to put a team out there that people will come watch and come know who the people are, and then they can kind of move forward." But yeah, not good spots no matter what for the Bulls.
No. And my last note on the Bulls, just because it'd be crazy if we talked about this team and didn't mention them. Lonzo Ball is a day older than me. He is still only 25 years young. Yeah. We're both going to be 26 next month. So he's, nearly 26 years old, but still just crazy young. You hope the knee can get figured out. And if it does, maybe Lonzo's the person to get traded from this group first.
And that's one of the biggest things about this team, right? Like this team is missing like a guy, like one of their core pieces. Like Lonzo got paid and brought in to be the starting point guard for 10 years, 15 years. And he's barely.
And how freaking good did they look when we actually
they were awesome.
A few glimpses of Lonzo throwing full court alley-oops to Zach LaVine.
Right.
And now he's just getting out of a chair with one leg to
arguing with
shove
Stephen
it. To shove it in Stephen A's face. So I had to mention Lonzo if we're talking Bulls, we hope somehow if the Chicago Bulls figure out anything, it's to get Lonzo back on the court because everyone would love to see that. Moving right along though, the Indiana Pacers. I mean, if you don't love the Pacers and you're an NBA fan, you got something wrong with you, man. Because the excitement, the young talent, just the history behind this franchise that is just waiting to have a good squad again. It's fun, man. I think if you're an Indiana Pacer fan, you got to be hyped. The over-under for a win total next year is 38.5. Another big spoiler, we all have the over here because we all love the Indiana Pacers. Steve, why don't you start with your MVP? I'm surprised that it's not somebody else. But it is pretty much the obvious answer. Give us a little Pacers minute here, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I have Halliburton as my MVP. If we're gonna be honest, I could find 4 or 5 MVPs on this team because I love. So this is like my team of just guys I love, like guys I think that are just super underrated that people don't give enough credit to that I think could have a big year. We'll start off with who I said is the team MVP, Tyrese Halliburton. It's gonna be kind of a hot take here. I would not be shocked, maybe a little surprised. I would not be shocked if Halliburton had not the same stats, but a first All-NBA SGA type of year. If he stays healthy the whole season. This is a guy who had the Pacers team last year, who wasn't that great last year in a playoff position before he got hurt. And then the world kind of fell apart and the Pacers, they fell out of it. It makes sense when you lose a point guard like that. Tyrese Halliburton, he may have an awkward shooting motion. It does not matter. He hits down the threes. He might have the best court vision of anyone not named LeBron James in the NBA right now. And he just makes everyone around him better. And when I look at a team of young players that I want to succeed or I think can succeed, you need someone who is steering the ship in the right direction. And that is the definition of Tyrese Halliburton. That is what he's been at every single level of basketball he's played. He's made players around him better. Now you have a lot of players on this team around Tyrese Halliburton that have untapped potential. Starting off with Ben Mathurin, one of our favorite rookies from last year. The dude is a walking bucket, and he was coming off the bench. He was coming off the bench and scoring 20 points a night. I mean, it was incredible what he's doing. I think we're going to see him in a consistent starter role this year, and being able to play alongside Halliburton for hopefully a full season would just be incredible to see what this guy can do offensively. You have Jarris Walker, one of my favorite rookies from the draft out of Houston. You want to talk about a player who's NBA ready. Jarris Walker is the definition of that. He's a 3-and-D winger, but this guy can do so much more. Probably the best defensive player in the draft. I know Wemby obviously has the size, and he's probably going to win more defensive players of the year, but I'm talking of just one-on-one guarding Jarris Walker. I don't think there's anyone else in the draft better than Jarris Walker. That he can shoot. He can handle the ball a little bit, and he's someone I think who's going to be one of those rookies who's just going to come in and be involved right off the start. Miles Turner, I know he was in trade talks for the entirety of last year in the offseason. He's still
the entirety of his career.
He's still super underrated and super overlooked. When he's on the court, he's a great player offensively and defensively as a big man who can stretch the floor, who's not a liability on either side of the court. And then you look at Buddy Hield, another guy who can get any bucket he wants. You want to talk about guys who kind of found their footing in the middle of last year? Aaron Naismith and Jalen Smith, who I was almost ready to label as busts. I know Dunny wasn't a huge fan of Naismith on the Celtics. They come to the Pacers. They looked like they could play basketball. Yeah, they looked like they could play basketball again. And then you get Bruce Brown, who might be one of the best guys in the NBA to come off the bench, just do whatever you need him to do, cause no issues. Bruce Brown very rarely makes a mistake. He's just a great overall basketball player, role player you want. And last but not least, saved from the New York Knicks. Now he's in the Pacers. Yes. I expect a big leap, whether it's coming off the bench or whether he sneaks his way in the starting lineup, from Obi Toppin, who's actually going to get minutes, who's not going to be behind Randall's 44 minutes and get to only play 4. Obi Toppin's going to have a role, and he's another one who was making a jump last year. We saw it. His outside shootings improved dramatically. Like, this is a guy who has the most athleticism probably anybody on the court at any time. And I just look at this team and I go, this is a lot of good young players who want to play together. I didn't mention Andrew Nembhard, who was one of the biggest surprises last year as a rookie too, who was great. This is a team that I think is going to learn to grow together, play together, and a lot of young talent. And like I said, they got a couple nice vets to help them, and they have a point guard, Tyrese Halliburton, steering them in the right direction, who has one of the best basketball minds, playmaking ability, whatever you name it. This is a type of jump I think we could see the team going from missing the playoffs to being like one of those feisty teams where you don't want to see them in the first round. You don't want to see them at any point in the playoffs. I love this Pacers team. I have the over, probably one of my favorite overs on the board, because like I said, Tyrese Halliburton is so overlooked, and there's so many good guys with potential on this team. Not a lot of household names that will become household names.
Yeah. And if you weren't sold on the Pacers before, folks, you are now, because of what Steve just gave us. That was beautifully put. Jake, at your MVP, you're most likely to be traded, or if you want to just echo anything that Steve just said, that is all welcome.
Yeah, I can't hype him up anymore. That was a great job. The Pacers should hire you, Steve, right, for that. put it in a hype. You should send it to social or something, because it was great. But they are going to be, the roster is very well built. Like you said, a lot of guys might not be household names now, will be, but they're just well built as a team you want to be in the modern NBA. And Rick Carlisle gets how to run a modern NBA franchise as well, and a roster, and how to get through to young guys too, and how to get the most out of them. So I completely agree with everything you said, Steve. This is the easiest over for me, because I think this team is going to be a 4 or 5 seed range this year. And you even took the spiciest take I had, because I think Halliburton is definitely going to be in consideration for first team All-NBA. And I think he will have a similar type jump to what not even the jump. I think the play is there. I think he's going to continue. He's going to get better and improve, but he's going to get the respect like SGA got his respect last year, because Halliburton is legitimately one of the most exciting players to watch in the league. And I can't wait to play with this team in 2K. And
it's a great 2K team. It's a great team.
It is a great 2K. And they're going to be my favorite League Pass team. That's for sure. Like, I will be watching a lot of Pacers basketball this year. And if you watched them last year, you were rewarded, because they played fun. it was always fun. They were always in exciting matchups and everything. I expect nothing less this year. So most likely to be traded, though, I guess I'll go with that and kick that off. I don't even know, man. Like, it'd be hard to see them. I guess it's Miles. It's got to be Miles Turner.
It's got to be Miles or Buddy, right? One of the vets.
Or Buddy, yeah.
Well, Buddy's a good one. But yeah, Miles Turner's just like he's been on the trading block since he's been there. Miles Turner's got to be one of the chillest dudes alive because he is literally every offseason rumored to be traded, and he is never like I've never heard that he's upset with the organization,
right?
Or he's never spoken publicly about how he wants out. And he's been here at the worst of worst. He's been here at the highs of highs since he's been on the Pacers. When Steve was talking about him, I actually looked it up because I think he does get overlooked in a lot of ways, mostly on the defensive end. He averages 2.3 blocks for his career. I feel like people think that he just became the shot blocker because I think at the beginning of last season, his first like 10 games, he was averaging like 4 blocks or something like that. But no, Turner's been doing that. A guy who averages 2.3 blocks on his career and also shooting over 35% from 3 on his career. So just like a great ball player, someone who means a lot to this organization. We won't even do worst case scenarios for this team because we're all so high on them. But the only thing I want to echo that Steve said is the offseason, the players they acquired in the offseason is the biggest part for this team. Adding guys like Bruce Brown, Serge Ibaka, who else is there? James Johnson, like another old guy. You know, I did give heat to the Bucks for having old reserves. Having old reserves on a team like this is key. And then Obi Toppin, who you mentioned, there ain't no stopping Obi Toppin, was their other acquired guy this offseason. And it just not only are they just great players to have coming off the bench, or you mentioned we wouldn't be surprised if Obi starts eventually, but they're just great guys to have on any team or a team like this, which I think they did perfectly. A lot of their stars or best players are on the younger side. You bring in some guys, some vets, Serge Ibaka, Bruce Brown, championship experience, and then a guy like Obi Toppin who just wasn't in the right situation before but has crazy potential. I think you said it, Steve. This was by far the easiest total to pick, and it was a clear over. I think they're going to be in the mid 40s, maybe even high 40s, low 50s, possibly low 50s for a win total for this team. And best case, I have fringe contender in the way we all talked about them. You might see the Indiana Pacers in the NBA championship, apparently.
that would be a little crazy maybe this first year, but I think this is a team that can build a team that's going to be competitive for a while. But yeah, like I said, I love this team, and I think they're only going up, right? Why was I down on Milwaukee and Chicago? Because I think they're trending downwards. They're getting older. Indiana's only going up. They're really only going up. I mean, Miles Turner's 27? Their only real old player that's going to get regular minutes is probably Buddy Hield.
Yep.
Yeah.
30. They're only going up. Sky's the limit for this team.
Yeah, Buddy Hield's 30. I mean, George Hill is 37. Serge Ibaka's 34. We don't think those guys are going to get much run.
I don't think they'll get much run. Maybe Ibaka a little bit, but.
Yeah, so we're excited for the Pacers. And our last team, the Detroit Pistons. Detroit basketball. Similar builds, I would say, to the Pacers. You know, they have a lot of young, good talent, a lot of guys with high upside. I don't think they're built quite as nicely as the Pacers, but another spoiler, we all have the over. I think it was just far too low for none of us to take the under.
Agreed.
Because 28.5 is a crazy line, in my opinion.
Super low, right?
That's all I have to say about the win total. So we all took the over. Steve, why don't you start us with the team MVP? I have a different guy. We'll see who Jake's got.
So I'm going Cade Cunningham, and I know there's a couple other exciting players on this team. The reason I'm going Cade Cunningham is I think he just has become forgotten because he was
He
hurt.
has.
And it's like, but Cade Cunningham, when he's on the court, he is great. I got the Dallas Luka jersey on right now, and Cade Cunningham, his game reminds me a lot like Luka Doncic's. He's just a bigger
Ooh.
guard, plays at his own pace, plays a little slower, but he can create his own shot. He can draw contact. He's not afraid, and he's a great playmaker. And he's a really good playmaker. And this is kind of, we saw this a little bit in college Oklahoma State. And then we kind of saw it at the Pistons. Then he got hurt. And it's like everyone forgot. Everyone just forgot about Cade Cunningham. And this is a guy, too, I think, who's going to take a step up. Like, we're going to see Cade Cunningham come back and be like, oh, yeah, that's Cade Cunningham. That's a guy who any given night could flirt with a triple-double because of, like, the way he plays. And he's another guy who fits my, what I want in a point guard, where he makes the players around him better. And the Pistons were terrible last year. They were awful, but we saw good things out of a lot of players on this team that could elevate them going forward for the future, right? We saw Jaden Ivey have his moments of being just a highlight on the NBA court. Jalen Duren had a fantastic rookie season. And then you have guys who, came over. Marvin Bagley was not very good. He looked pretty good on the Pacers. On the Pistons. James Wiseman was another one of those guys where he was just lost on the Warriors. And he started to show a little bit for the Pistons. And I like the Pistons to take a step up. I think Cade Cunningham is going to make these players around him better. And I think the world's going to realize, like, oh, Cade Cunningham's good when he's averaging like 24, 25, and like 7 and 6, something like that. Because that to me is a team MVP. A guy could do pretty much everything. And like I said, I love Luka. Cade Cunningham, I'm not going to say he's the player Luka is, but the way he plays, the way he kind of, dissects the NBA game, it reminds me of Luka.
I like that. What you
Yeah,
got, Jake?
I got Cade too. He said everything I wanted to say. I fucking love Cade Cunningham. I hate that he's a Piston. He's going to be a super duper star. He also could be a guy that could be an all NBA conversation like Shea was the last couple of years. I think Cade, the sky is the limit for that man. And this team now, like you said, Dunny, they're not quite at that build yet that the Pacers are at, but they've got pieces. That starting lineup is exactly the kind of starting lineup you'd want to put out there on the floor in 2023. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's beautiful. And I'm a huge Thompson twin fan. And so the fact that they got Asar I hated it on draft night. And that's how it's such a great pick for them. He complements Jaden and Cade so well too. Like that. It's going to be a great trio, I think, in the future. We're not even talking about, Duren, who is great, and Wiseman, who maybe Wiseman figures something out. Who knows? Yeah. Like if there's anything left there, and if he can reach somewhat close, like, the talent's always been there for James Wiseman. Clearly, the Warriors didn't have a great plan for him, bringing him in. They just wanted to have the asset. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's something there left too. But I just like the way they're positioned right now. But I got to go with Cade. He's just so damn good. But who you got, Dunny?
I actually have Jaden Ivey, and it's a couple different things. I really like the player. Loved him a lot in college. It's also probably recency bias, just because you guys mentioned it. We haven't seen Cade in forever. Right. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, probably including myself, forget how good he was. But the thing for Ivy, it was, unlike Cade, he is the traditional play style and size for his position, which Cade it's probably an upgrade that Cade's big for a point guard. Yeah. But I just can see a path more clearly for success for Jaden Ivey, just because how easy he makes it look when he's slotted into that 2-guard position. He averaged 16 points his rookie year, and I honestly thought his shooting splits were low. I think those are numbers that are going to go way up. He only shot 41 and 34 from the field and 3. I think both those will go up. A guy who averaged 16 his rookie year, and people might say, well, Cade wasn't there. What if that number goes down? I actually think he's a great guy to play alongside Cade. I think they'll strive together. And just to be different, I like Jaden Ivey. We haven't seen Cade for a year. I think Jaden Ivey could easily, take over as the best player on this team. I did want to ask you guys that picture that surfaced of Cade Cunningham this summer, of him looking quite large during the summer games. What do you guys think of that? You think bad angle, or do he have the James Harden treatment going?
I don't know if we'll go as far as James Harden treatment. Well, I'm not going to say anything until we see first game, right? These off season.
I honestly think his beard was just long.
Yeah, it's an off season too. Like I'll make that determination when we get to the first game of the season, but also too, would I compare Kate a little bit to Luka? Luka, his first couple of years had a little bit, little bit out of him as well. So hey,
that's a great point. I was gonna say there's probably a lot more guys in the offseason looking pretty damn dirty.
Absolutely,
and all sports too. So I'm not holding on, Kate. I think he'll tighten it up for the season. The beard, though, I think you should rock the old man beard, though.
I think that's why a part of the reason he looked a lot bigger. I think I just think he hadn't groomed himself. Most likely to be traded for me on this squad is Isaiah Stewart, Big Beef Stew. And it is so crazy to me that Isaiah Stewart is only 22 years old. Much like Wiseman, both those guys are only being 22 is like I feel like Isaiah Stewart doing the whole rampage thing where he tried to get to LeBron, like that has already been 2 years removed, and I feel like he was kind of already a name before that happened. I feel like Isaiah Stewart's been around forever. He's only 22 years old. Reason I think he's most likely to be traded, same thing as all the other guys I've had in this conversation. He was a rumored guy over the offseason before the NBA draft that might get moved. They drafted, as you guys mentioned, Asura Thompson, who, has a different game. Stewart definitely plays more like a big than Thompson does, but there's only an inch in height difference there. They do have James Wiseman, they have Marvin Bagley, and they have Jalen Duran, who's only 19 years old and is already far better than Isaiah Stewart. And that's not a knock at Isaiah Stewart. I just think Jalen Duran is the real deal, and he's the perfect big to have on this team with Cade and Jaden Ivey, who can take the scoring load themselves. And this is a guy who rebounds and plays defense better than most young bigs in the league. So all that to be said, I think Isaiah Stewart, it would just make sense if you move a guy like him. Yeah. Probably high capital, a lot of teams interested.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I don't really have an exact answer, but I think you're in the right direction, Tony, where it's going to be one of those big men not named Jalen Durant because they just have too many guys. They just have too many guys down low. So I think Marvin Bagley could be one we see as well. I mean, he did like Bagley, Stewart, and a Wiseman have all shown a little bit of flashes for the Pistons towards the end of last year of like, they can have their moments. They can help a team. Yeah, very strange. But hey, if that's going to work, then I think they can't play all four. You just can't play all four. So you got to get rid of one. And then the other one, we haven't mentioned this guy's name at all. I think he's one of the most consistent players in the NBA, Bogdanovich, though. He just seems like the odd man out. 34 years old. Maybe there's a contending team, right? That's the perfect guy to add to a contending team. So Bogdanovich is another name I have floating out there because if the Pistons, even if they improve a little bit and it's like we're not going to win anything this year, we're just kind of building a team. What are you keeping Bogdanovich around for, right? You can get a couple assets for him. He's 34 years old, and I promise you, we get to a little closer to the summer or not to the summer, to the spring, and teams are going for that playoff push or be like, we got to build a title team. Bogdanovich is a name I think that would pop up.
Oh, now Jake's muted. The mute monster's getting all of us.
Oh man!
Third time's the charm. No,
some good podcasting today.
Good job, Steve. Let's give Steve his credit for staying unmuted and talking at the right times today. I think Bagley could be the odd man out here again too. I feel like I like Stewart. And so I think it could be either or Bogdanovich. One of these guys is going to be out, but Bagley or Wiseman still has the name, so they might just be able to get just a little more for it. But it could be like Joe Harris is a guy that someone in the league will send some picks for, things like that. I kind of like this team to just kind of chill and just see where it goes for a little bit because I feel like they could be we get into best case scenario too. I feel like they could be a sneaky. We got them all over. I feel like they're going to be in the play-in and they're going to be battling for a playoff spot. I think they could be a 10 or a 9 seed. and really, I don't know if they'll make the playoffs. And if they made the playoffs, I think they'd get swept out by the Celtics or the Bucks or anybody else that they would face in the first round. But I think that they, if Ivy makes a jump, if Cade comes back and he looks like we think he's going to look, if I think both Thompson twins are going to show up looking pretty NBA ready and affecting the game. So I just feel like this team's floor just got raised so much from last year. And I don't know. We'll see about the rest. That's the absolute best case scenario, though. We're not going to go too crazy with this team. Like, what was that? You said it was 28.5 done the total, right? Yeah, that's what we were at. Yeah, like they could win like 32 games. That's still going to be a really bad. Still a 50-loss team. It's not. We're talking about not crazy ceilings, but I think 20. I don't think they're a 20 win team. I think they're a 30-win team.
This team could be like the Pacers last year, right? Where you see things you like and there's a lot of excitement, but your expectations, are limited. You're like, all right, well, like we understand that we're still a few years away, but we can see potential with this team. That's kind of where I see the Pistons.
Yeah, that's beautifully put by the both of you. I think this over and the Pacers over were definitely the two easiest for me. And it's crazy that a team with a 28.5 win total for the line could easily be a playoff play-in team. None of us would be surprised, or not easily playoff, but easily could be in the play-in conversation, and none of us would be surprised. So
I think I think this is the division we're all gonna. Whatever happens with the Bucks, because I'm different than you two. I still might bet on that under by the time the season starts. I feel like this is the one we're gonna nail because the Cavs and Bulls are way too hyped up right now, and I can tell you they should not be, at least from my estimation, being close. And I feel like these two teams aren't talked about enough, and they feel like there's more talent than people want to give them. And because of those two things happening at the same time, these totals ended up where they were, and we're just gonna fade both those things and see what happens.
Yeah, it's this division definitely had the most clarity as far as just looking at the totals, looking at the rosters, and being like, okay. Yeah, I can make a decision here. So, yeah, I think you're right on the money there, Jake. And that is going to do it for the Central Division. And unless you guys have anything else, that'll do it for the episode as well. You guys all good on the Central Division?
Next week. You guys ready?
Yeah. Let's hit us with it.
We're going to Cali, baby. It's the Pacific Division. We're talking Phoenix. We're talking Lakers. We're talking Clippers. We're talking
Jake gets
Kings.
to talk LeBron.
We're talking Warriors. Well, we got to finish with We got to finish with the champs, so that they got to go last. So next is
fair.
Yeah. All right. We still have We still have the Southeast.
And we still have the Southeast too. Yeah.
We still have the Southeast.
Which hopefully a Dame trade happens within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, we're just holding out to do the Southeast Premier.
Exactly. We might have to push it back another week.
That'd be so perfect, man.
But also because Dame, we got Northwest too, so we could trade him right before that Southeast preview, and we got 2 weeks of Dame talk right there. It's perfect.
Yeah, so you heard it, guys. Pacific Division next week. A lot of fun teams there. Today was the Central Division for Steve, for Jake, for myself. Go follow at Happy Hour Hoops 1 on all socials. Follow Trainwreck Sports. Keep up with all of our NFL content that's going on right now. And then, of course, we are 35 days, if you're listening live, away from the NBA season. And we're that much closer, baby. Hoops soon. Later, guys.
Also, did you guys see that Max is going to be streaming all of the TNT games now this year? If you have Max, all NBA content, all March Madness, and all NHL games will stream free on Max. So that was the one news and note I forgot to mention. So anybody who has Max or you want to get Max, you're cutting cords, whatever, it's $12 or something right now. All NBA TNT. And the thing I'm most excited about is live uploads in the morning after Inside the NBA. That's what I'm looking forward to the most. Just go watch Inside in the morning. I'll wake up and I'll just throw Inside on Max, and that'll be my morning show every day.
That's true. That's nice.
The YouTube clips are great, but it's the whole show. It doesn't do it justice.
Oh, yeah. You got to take it all in.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you heard it. Later, guys.